Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for attending Therapy Issues and Techniques for High Functioning Clients webinar featuring Dr. Chloe. Thank you guys so much for being patient with us. We've had a couple of technical difficulties here in the beginning, so please bear with us as we get the slides rolling here in a minute. But I do want to personally introduce Dr. Chloe Carmichael. She's a licensed clinical psychologist who graduated Phi Beta Kappa from Columbia University, earning a BA in psychology with departmental honors. She holds a master's and doctorate of philosophy in clinical psychology from Long Island University. Her private practice focuses on stress, anxiety, relationship issues, self-esteem, and coaching. Her USA Today best-selling book, Nervous Energy: Harness the Power of Your Anxiety, was endorsed by Deepak Chopra and called a game changer by Jim McMahon, the founder of 1-800-Flowers. Dr. Chloe has appeared as an expert on ABC Nightline, CBS Inside Edition, and many other media outlets. She is also on the advisory board of Women's Health Magazine, as well as an expert contributor for Psychology Today and Mind Body Green. I'm your host, Andrea Camp, sales manager with Therapy Sites, and we specialize in website and online marketing solutions for mental health professionals. I'd like to personally welcome each and every one of you to this free educational event. During today's session, Dr. Chloe is going to ask some questions to you folks, and we'd love to get your feedback and your participation. So if you want to take a look at your GoToWebinar control panel, there you'll see a questions tab. Feel free to use this tab to answer any questions, ask any of your own questions, and make any comments that you may have along the way. After the webinar has been concluded, we do have a quick survey. We'd love to hear your feedback. Now that we've gotten all that taken care of, let me get Dr. Chloe's slides up so that we can officially introduce Dr. Chloe. So let me make myself the presenter and let me just launch. So slideshow. So you guys tell me, can you see the slides? Everybody see? All right. So Dr. Chloe, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Thank you so much, Andrea. If you could please cruise up to slide number 5 for me.
Sure.
It's the slide that is going to be focusing on high functioning clients, right? Because this is it's a presentation where I'm going to share with you about the techniques that I have found helpful specifically with high functioning clients, because it's a little different than what many of us, including me, are used to. When we're training in graduate school to see clients, by definition, we're typically seeing clients oftentimes that are not as high functioning. The reason is because when you're talking about a really high functioning person, they typically are going to see a fully licensed therapist. It's usually people, that are having some other challenge in their life, or for whatever reason, that they are ending up with a trainee. And so when we get turned out into the actual world and we have our private practice, suddenly we're seeing clients that are similar to maybe the clients that we saw at, clinics and whatnot in our training, but it's a little different when we're dealing with, say, an executive, or, a young polished professional. And those types of people, when they're coming to us, Andrea, if you can click again to the slide number 6, they're different than the types of clients that we saw in our training. In our training, at least for me, a lot of times I was just trying to teach, basic social norms, or, general social skills, or even just the simple act of being there every week at the same time for the person. That was healing oftentimes for that person in and of itself, to learn about, keeping a schedule and having a solid relationship with another person that was healthy and somewhat informative. That was enough to hold and engage the client. But high functioning clients, they have a very fulfilling social life already. They, have a career. When they are coming to a private pay therapy session, they're looking for something typically a little bit more. So Andrea, please again to slide number 7 to move ahead now. These clients oftentimes are actually dealing with anxiety. You know, they're juggling a lot of balls in the air, and they've oftentimes even used anxiety very productively. A lot of them will joke about being a little bit OCD, or, you know, gee, I'm a perfectionist, or oh my gosh, I'm going to freak out and have a panic attack if I don't get my report done on time, right? And so a lot of them have used anxiety productively, but then they almost, I find, get sort of too good at their own game of using anxiety to keep themselves motivated. So a lot of times they'll come to me saying, you know, Dr. Chloe, how do I get rid of my anxiety? And I want to teach them, in fact, actually, there's a healthy function to anxiety, which is to stimulate preparation behaviors. We want to put you in charge of the anxiety and not having the anxiety be in charge of you. So we want to reframe that anxiety essentially as a springboard for productivity, not as an impediment to productivity. And it's my experience again that high achieving people, high functioning people, they tend to have anxiety. So let's just move ahead, Andrea, to number 8. We're again talking about how to use anxiety productively. So the role of anxiety is going to be kind of like this coach here that's, you know, helping this high achieving player to go ahead and meet his goals and to work ahead. And so it can be a little tough, it can be a little challenging, but it's there to push you in a productive way. So again, with these high functioning clients, they don't typically just want to come to a therapy session and have a therapist endlessly ask them, you know, how do you feel about that? I can't tell you how many clients have come to my office, and I always ask them, you know, have you been in therapy before? Yes. Why are you leaving your previous therapist? Well, she's really nice, but I just don't feel like I'm getting a lot out of it. She just kind of smiles and nods, and she's very nice, but I know a lot of very nice people, and I'm looking for a therapist where I can actually get some skills, you know, that I can measure and see some results in my life. So, and Andrea, if we can go ahead now to slide number 9.
Okay.
One of the techniques I want to share with you that I find clients really like is called the zone of control. So what we do there is we take a really complicated, you know, kind of behemoth of a worry. So suppose that you have a client that's like, oh, I'm just so nervous about my job search, or oh, I really want a promotion, you know, but it's overwhelming. So we take a big concern, and that's step 1, taking the inventory. And then Andrea, if we can jump ahead to slide number 10, where we begin to divide it into zones of control and zones of non-control. And we actually write it down. Now, I do have worksheets available for people that, you know, some clients really like those worksheets and some therapists really like to use them.
Hmm.
But you can also just do these, you know, on any old piece of notebook paper. So it's really up to you. But basically what we do is we take the big worry, and Andrea, if you can go ahead now to slide number 11, and
Okay.
then in fact to slide number 12,
Okay.
we start to take inventory and we say, okay, well, I wasn't born with the family connections. And then Andrea, just if you can go ahead to 13, please.
Hmm.
13, and we say, gee, I also don't have that wardrobe of power suits. And head on, please, to 14. Okay, and gee, I also made this mistake, and it could really hurt my chances of a promotion, right? Those are things that we cannot control. So we would say to the client, okay, well, let's take that. You have this concern about the promotion. Instead of just saying, okay, well, when's the first time in your life that you felt anxious? Okay, let's sit with that anxiety. Instead, what many high functioning clients want to do, and this is actually a healthy thing, is they say, no, I want to do something about it. I don't want to explore my anxiety. I don't want to sit with my anxiety. I want to know how I can actually be solution focused here. So here's again what we do is we say, well, what parts of this situation can you not control? Or we might not even say to the client, give it to me in that organized format. We might just say, talk about it, tell me about your concerns, and then on our own piece of paper, as they talk, you know, we're breaking it down into these categories. So Andrea, if you can please go ahead to slide
Sure.
15.
Sure.
So And then you can see what we start doing then is we say, well, okay, I wasn't born with these family connections, but I can build my own network. And Andrea, next slide again, please.
Hmm.
And maybe I cannot afford a wardrobe of power suits, okay? But what I can do is I can work on my existing wardrobe. And then this mistake I made in the past, well, can't change the past. But next slide, Andrea, please.
Sure.
Um, I can confront the problem, okay? Now, Andrea, next slide again, please.
Sure.
Here's where the zone of control really takes into action this idea of saying the healthy function of anxiety is to stimulate preparation behaviors. And by the way, telling clients this, that the healthy function of anxiety is to stimulate preparation behaviors, is very soothing to them. Because when they say, how do I get rid of my anxiety? I mean, that's like fighting the rain, right? And so when we say, well, in fact, we don't want to get rid of it, we just want to use it appropriately, they tend to like that, because then we don't have to have anxiety about anxiety. By the way, I also find that when I start offering clients ways that they can use their anxiety appropriately, it can almost become diagnostic, because someone who's in a healthier space is typically going to be glad for this. They'll say, oh, thank you. This is really helpful. Here's now when I feel those jitters about the promotion, I can go to my list here of action items and I can start using that adrenaline energy to do something. Other clients might say they're very resistant to doing something about it. And then that's your clue that maybe they're kind of attached to their anxiety, or maybe there's a more underlying issue. But a great way to start to determine that is to first offer them some good, healthy ways to channel the anxiety and see how that lands for them. So as you can see, we say, okay, well, I can build my network. And then we say, okay, specifically, how could you do that? Well, searching online, this was, for a lawyer, so her search was, search online for, lawyers plus networking and attend the networking events and nurture my existing contacts. And Andrea, if you can please flip to the next slide, we say,
Sure.
okay, well, I can work on my existing wardrobe, right? I can have a stylish friend go through my closet. I can tailor certain clothes and, keep a list of needs, that I get at my good sales when you see a good sale. And next slide again, please, Andrea.
Sure.
And then here's the big one, right? Gee, I made a mistake in the past, or there's a big gap on my resume. What am I going to do about that? Well, we can role play discussing it in interviews, maybe, take a class or a training to show, well, yes, I had this problem in the past with where I misentered a QuickBooks thing, but look, I've since taken this course, and so I can show, what I can do about this. Or, thought replacements, which I'm guessing some of you here are probably familiar with thought replacements, but those are also something, covered in my bigger training about this, which is available for continuing education credit as well. And you'll see that there's some promo codes and things like that in the margins of all these slides. So, you know, the idea here again is that we take a big behemoth of a worry or a concern, and then we break it into the parts we can control and the parts we cannot control. And then we jot down specific action items of how we can control those parts. And then we say to the client, so when you're anxious, instead of saying, oh, I better do deep breathing exercises and try to squash away this anxiety, instead we say, oh, thank you, anxiety, for popping up, because we know your healthy function is to stimulate preparation behaviors. Here's a whole list of ways that I can prepare, that I can get moving with this anxiety. Because again, when we think about anxiety, it brings, say racing thoughts or sweaty palms, or those are all signs of energy. That the trick is just to point the energy at the right target. So just to keep things moving here, Andrea, if you can go to the next slide, please.
Sure.
Another issue that I have found high functioning people have sometimes, and by the way, you can use these techniques with lower functioning people as well. But since I know a lot of us are in private practice, by definition, that's typically going to mean higher functioning people, because private practice typically means private pay. So the person has to be able to manage their finances enough to, meet a private pay type of a practice. A private practice, again, they're going to have to manage their own appointment. They're going to have to honor your 24-hour cancellation policy, all those types of things. So again, you can use these techniques with lower functioning people, but this particular presentation is geared towards why and how you can use them with higher functioning clients, which is typically the private practice is going to have more of those. So another thing with high functioning people is that sometimes they can be very persistent, right? They can say, "Oh, I just, once I latch onto a topic, I'm like a dog with a bone on it, and I just keep chewing on it," right? And that can be a good thing. So suppose, that you're getting ready for a big meeting or a big presentation, and you've allowed your mind to just start, auto defaulting onto this topic, and that works really well for you. You make a lot of progress on it until, the big meeting is over, right? Then what do we do? Or let's suppose that you have a client that went through a big breakup, and for a while, they kind of licked their wounds and thought about that person quite a lot. And for a while, frankly, it was productive, right? It was part of a mourning, grieving process, or, they were reviewing all the things that they learned from the relationship or that they could have done differently. But at a certain point, it's just time to move on, right? We just need to learn how to redirect our thoughts onto something else. But I always explain to clients, you only have permission to do the mental shortlist if it's truly a healthy time to move on. If it's not used properly, this technique can almost become like a form of practicing denial, right? So if you went through a breakup, but you have not done the work of really thinking about why it went wrong and what you've learned from it, then you should not pivot away mentally. You should only pivot away when it's becoming ruminative, when you've been down this road 1,000 times and your mind has just got a cognitive habit, which is, again, a cognitive habit is a good thing. High functioning people have efficient brains, and habits are a good thing. But at a certain point, a habit becomes a rut, and we need to move on. So we can go to the next slide, please, Andrea. What we
Okay.
do with the mental shortlist, and you'll see there's a picture again of the worksheet that kind of guides people through this exercise. But again, you don't need a worksheet to do this. What we do with the mental shortlist is we say, okay, what are 5 other good, healthy topics that would be a better, more productive use of this wonderful gift of mental energy that I'm having? So again, we don't want to say to ourselves like, oh, stop it. Stop thinking about that thing. Stop thinking about him. I really need to move on or whatever, because it's like telling yourself not to think about pink elephants. You just think about pink, it's reinforcing it for you. And the technical term is called competition and blockage. When it comes to, cognitive language psychology, you get what's called competition and blockage, because the more you think of the topic you're trying to not think about, you're blocking yourself with that very topic. So what we do is we come up with a good mental short list, and it should have about 5 things on it. I encourage people to draw from a variety of domains, right? So it could be something like, maybe you're thinking about ways to redecorate your house, or fun dates that you could plan with your friends or family, or, birthday party for your kids or whatever, work projects, personal development. Maybe you want to take those moments and practice your meditations or your breathing exercises or your prayer life, or, read a book or whatever it is. But we should have about 5 things, and it is so much easier to pivot on to a topic when we have a good juicy list of topics. And you do need to write it down. I tell my clients, in fact, I'll often encourage them to I'll say, you know what, why don't you take out your phone right now and just, jot down the 5 topics that you're going to pivot onto, because they sound really obvious and simple when you're in your supportive therapist's office environment and whatnot. But when you're in those moments of vulnerability and the old topic is kind of screaming for you, it can be hard. I sometimes compare it to like if you're trying to eat healthy if you have a fridge full of really good, healthy pre-cut snacks, it's so much easier to get into those than if you just wait until you're feeling snacky and then suddenly trying to randomly figure out something else to have that's going to be healthy, right? So the mental shortlist, I think, has really got multiple benefits because not only in the practical sense that you're helping to get away from those ruminative thoughts by having a list of good topics to pivot onto instead, but what it also does is it gives you self-care because it's your way of saying, "Oh, look, good for me. I planned ahead. I made this list. I anticipated my needs. I anticipated my vulnerability, and I made a preparation for myself," right? So it's soothing in and of itself, just knowing that you've done that step for yourself. And then, of course, it's very helpful on a practical level too. So we will definitely, by the way, have some time for Q&A at the end, but I just want to take a moment as well and just invite Andrea, if there's people that want to chat, any questions or comments in the chat. I'm not able to see it, but please, Andrea, feel free to jump on and read
Okay,
any questions that people may have.
of
Um,
course.
so in the meantime, Andrea, if you can go to the next slide, please.
Sure.
I want to talk about another technique that is really helpful for high functioning clients, which is called mindfulness. Now, I really like to immediately attach the word, and we're on slide 23, Andrea, just confirming. I like to immediately attach the word metacognition whenever I say mindfulness. The reason is because, again, when we're dealing with sophisticated, high functioning people, mindfulness has become, such a buzzword that a lot of them, they might be like, "Oh my goodness, I can read about mindfulness in Glamour magazine. I can't believe this lady's talking about mindfulness," right? And so I always want to explain to them that we're going to be doing mindfulness a little differently than what they might have heard of before, that they might have heard of mindfulness as just, being in the moment and taking a deep breath and being in the moment. This is different. Mindfulness done properly, when it's being done at places like the University of Massachusetts Medical School and Johns Hopkins and the Harvard Medical School, they're looking at it in terms of your ability to observe yourself and describe in words to other people what is going on with yourself. And so that's why we have this picture of a car on a highway and we're taking the bird's eye view of it. So that car represents the person's thoughts, and the metacognition means that this person has an overview to notice these are my thoughts and this is where they are going. So for example, if you go into a networking meeting or you go into any meeting, say, and you just find yourself feeling a little anxious, a person without a lot of mindfulness skills would just say, "Oh, gee, I'm anxious. I should do maybe a breathing exercise or whatever." But a person with mindfulness metacognition skills would zoom out, like in this picture, and say, "Okay, I'm anxious, but why? Is it because I just had an argument with my spouse and so I'm feeling rattled and off my game here? And so I need to figure out a way to put that topic on the shelf? Or am I nervous because I'm at a networking event and I feel like I'm in a one down position. I'm, between jobs and I'm trying to figure out how to relate to people in a confident way. Or am I anxious because whenever I'm around people, I always get anxious. And so this is actually nothing new for me, right? But as therapists, we can understand that the reason why a person is anxious is going to really be illuminative in terms of helping them to figure out the best tool to use, right? So with that said, I do use a breathing exercise to teach mindfulness, but I always explain to the person first, the real purpose of this exercise is not so that you can do a breathing exercise, even though that's very nice. The breathing exercise is really a jumping off point to teach you how to observe yourself and then put into words what's happening in your interior life. And again, a person might say, well, gee, why do I need help figuring out what's in my interior life? I'm right there. I know what's in my interior life, right? Well, have you ever, for example, had the experience of hearing yourself snap at say a clerk somewhere, and it's not until you hear yourself be snappy, that you say, wow, gee, I'm a little irritable today. And then it causes you, if you have good mindfulness skills, to be able to zoom out and to even put it into words and to be able to say to that person, you know what? I just heard myself snapping at you, and I'm sorry. I really just realized that I was underslept last night, and this is not your fault, and I'm sorry. What a big difference that is. The person who has the awareness to notice something about themselves that hadn't been quite front of mind, and then put it into words, right? And to explain it to the other person. So if you can go ahead to the next slide, please, Andrea.
Sure.
This is the exercise that I like to teach people, which is the 3-part breath. And Andrea, if it's possible for you to go just to like a camera of me right now, so I don't even need to like show the slide for this. I can show people better probably on camera myself, but we can also do it on the camera or on the slide. That's fine too. Am I on the camera or on the slide, just so I know?
Let's see here. My computer has decided to slow up, but I think you're on because I stopped sharing your presentation.
Okay, great. So basically with the 3-part breath then, the first part is going to be in your stomach. So you take a breath in and I have the client put their hand on their stomach and I say, take a breath in, you feel how your stomach balloons. And then I have them put their hands on the outer upper rib cages and I say, now take a deeper breath in and you'll feel how your rib cage expands horizontally. And then I say, now put your hand on your upper chest and take a breath in, and you'll feel physically how that part rises vertically. And I explain, okay, so those are the 3 parts of the 3-part breath. When we do it, we'll be inhaling the belly, continuing through the middle chest, and then continuing all the way up through the upper chest. And then we'll hold for a moment at the top of the inhale, and then we'll exhale just the upper chest and then the middle chest. And then the belly empties completely, maybe even taking navel to spine like you're fitting into a tight pair of pants to really push the air out. So that's how we do that 3-part breath. But again, I explained to them the real purpose here is to learn how to observe your interior life, put it into words and describe it. And study after study after study at very prestigious places has shown that practicing this skill on a low stakes item, such as your experience of a breathing exercise, actually increases your ability to do that with complex things like, an awkward moment that you have to explain. Oh, gee, I'm sorry, I was late to your meeting. I know it's awkward because I was late for the other one before it, but I'm really hoping we can get past that because I have a lot of good information to share with you, right? Being able to say that when you've arrived to a meeting late versus somebody who doesn't have that skill and they just arrive late and they know they were late before, and so they just get uptight and they don't know how to acknowledge it. It's a big difference in terms of being able to communicate with people, right? And the same thing, I know I keep using workplace examples, but the same thing would obviously go for, you're late to a date and you say, gee, I'm so sorry. I know you told me that people being on time is really important to you. And I wish I'd been able to call, but I was on this thing and I couldn't get off. So thanks for your patience. I really hope we can, just still reset and have a good time here tonight. Being able to put that inner experience into words helps relationships and it helps to regulate our emotions. We know as therapists that when we can take our interior life and put it into words, it increases our sense of control. So the way that we do that 3-part breath to really use it and turn it into a mindfulness, metacognition, interior life into words exercise. If you can go to the next slide, please,
Sure.
Andrea.
Mhm.
You see there's that man who's basically looking at a bunch of thoughts. So he's somebody who's essentially taken that interior life and been able to externalize it, right? So the way we do it is I tell the client, take your hands and put them in your lap with your palms facing up. And I explain, we're going to do it in kind of like a really proper way here. But once you get practiced at it, you'll be able to do the 3-part breath without going through the whole putting your hands in your lap thing. You can just do it even secretly and nobody will even notice you're doing it. And you don't even have to actually do it in the moment that you want to verbalize. You'll just build the skill that way. But I tell them, take your hands, put them in your lap with your palms facing up, and just take your physical gaze to your hands and just look at yourself, look at your hands for a moment without trying to change your breath. And just think of 5 facts about your breath. It can be like, oh, how you notice your clothing moving with your breath, or you notice how deeply or shallowly you're breathing, or even just you notice the way that you're responding to the exercise, your thoughts and feelings. I also try to normalize with them. If you're thinking like, oh, gee, I didn't know I was going to do a breathing exercise, or any thoughts that you might have, you're just noticing and observing 5 facts about yourself and your breath. And then I say, all right, now we're going to do the 3-part breath. I guide them through maybe 2 rounds of it. And then I say, okay, now keeping your gaze on your hands, let your breath return to normal. And again, now try to come up with 5 facts about your breath. And I explain one of the ways that this is sharpening our powers of self-observation and in a moment the ability to verbalize it is because when we have a novel stimulus or something that is changed, it becomes easier to notice it and to verbalize it. So just, notice now 5 things about your breath or yourself and verbalize them. And whenever you're ready, feel free to share. And oftentimes they'll say, oh, gee, that was nice because that was really relaxing. And if you can go to the next slide, please, Andrea.
Sure.
I tell them, hey, that's great. I'm glad it was relaxing, but you know what? That's just a side effect. And then what they'll often usually share as well is, well, I noticed my breathing is a little deeper now, or, I noticed certain thoughts kept popping up throughout about my day. And I normalize all of that. And I say, that's great. Whatever it is, the purpose here is just to get good at noticing yourself and observing yourself and then putting it into words. And I suggest to them, you can go ahead and try this every night or every morning and just write down or say aloud 3 or 4 things that you noticed and observed. I tell them, and you'll notice there might be days where you're like, oh, it was really relaxing and I found it really fulfilling. And there'll be other days when you say, I felt like my mind was all over the place and I was in a bad mood and I kept thinking the exercise is stupid and it's not working, or, whatever. And I tell them that's fine because it's giving you that metacognition ability that you can start to notice. I was doing the exact same exercise, but on different days I was reacting to it differently. And that gives you that metacognition then that when you're interacting with somebody at a meeting or on a date or thinking about a topic, that you can start noticing what you are bringing to the table, how much of your reaction and thoughts and experiences about what is happening is coming from background stuff in your own life. And I tell them the goal is not to separate that stuff or to get to the point where your background stuff is no longer affecting it. The goal is to be aware of it and be able to verbalize and explain it. And again, the more we can do that, the better tools that we can choose. So again, if you go into that meeting and you're feeling anxious and you have the metacognition to say, oh, well, I'm actually just really anxious because I had a stupid fight with my spouse. Okay, well, the solution there is to send my honey a little text that says, I'm sorry, we fought, I love you, I'll talk later. He'll text me something nice back, and then I can go and really hit the meeting. But on the other hand, if I realize, oh, okay, well, I'm actually insecure here because there's all these people that are a lot more successful and powerful than me, and I'm feeling small, well, then I know that I need a different type of intervention. Maybe I need to do some thought replacements about, my own worth, or think of, like, say, my five biggest wins in life, or whatever it is. But the mindfulness and the metacognition is a really important exercise I explain to high functioning people as well, because I explain you have so many thought streams and so much going on in your head. It's actually easier for high functioning people sometimes to lose track of themselves, again, just simply because they have so much going on. So Andrea, if you can flip ahead again, we
Sure.
can pretty much skip slide 27. It's just explaining that I do have those worksheets. Going up to slide 28, when I'm working with high functioning people, because it's about therapy techniques and approaches and issues with high functioning people. So it's more than, just the techniques, right? It's also about your approach to the sessions. So as I said earlier, one reason that I've had clients tell me that they left their previous therapist was, she was really nice, but I wasn't really getting a lot. And so definitely want to teach them techniques and skills like we just discussed. But what they also say, because these are super smart people, and again, they're paying privately, so every minute counts. They don't want to have to repeat themselves. It feels like a waste of their time, and it feels like a waste of their money, is what they've told me before. They're like, well, I felt like I'd show up to a session and she didn't really like remember like what I had said before or whatever. And the easy solution is, I know we do progress notes after a session, but I write things down during the session. Like pretty much everything that they're saying, I'm just kind of scribbling it down. Andrea, if you can go to the next slide, please.
Sure.
Because you never know what's going to go on. Like we don't know what's important until sometimes until 5-10 minutes later, right? And so I'm just pretty much writing it all down. They're like, well, I showed up on the date, and and he said hi, and I'd been to this thing before, and I'm just writing it all down. And I'm making, as you can see, I use this shorthand system. I put a little box next to something where I'm thinking that I want to make a point to them. I think I have something, an insight or a technique that I think is appropriate to bring up, but obviously I don't want to interrupt them. I also don't want to forget what I have to say, and I don't want to either just keep having to use my own working memory to keep my own points in mind, because then I'm less focused on what they're saying. So I put a little open box next to a point that I want to come back to when it's my turn to talk. Because believe me, again, with these private practice fees and whatnot, when they stop talking and they look at me like, okay, Dr. Chloe, what do you got? I feel like I need to kind of really provide value, right? So my eyes are going oftentimes to see, what open boxes. Um, Also questions. So, if somebody's, says like, well, yeah, my dad always said, I'd find a guy eventually, haha, and then like they just keep kind of talking and moving on. And my question is, oh, really? Well, how did you feel when he said that? Or, tell me more about that relationship or whatever. I put a question by that because I know that my eyes will find that question, and I might, instead of have a point I want to make, maybe I have what I think is a good question I want to ask. Now, I also put that little no smoking sign by something that they've said that I think I should challenge, right? So maybe if they say, yeah, my boyfriend broke up with me, but you know what? I don't really care. I mean, I just didn't think he was right for me anyway. And, and then they want to move on and talk about something else. Okay, fine. Because of the sake of rapport, and because I'm also curious maybe about what else they're going to say, I'm not going to interrupt them right then and there and challenge them, but I'll put that little no smoking sign by it, so that again, when the time is right, I can revisit that. I can say, now I know you said that you didn't really care, but I also know that you're somebody who uses your time carefully. And so the fact that you did spend, a fair amount of time with that person does make me wonder what was going on there, right? Do you think maybe you do care, or what was happening there? The HW, this is so important, homework. I need to, I can't emphasize to you guys enough, again, how many times when people come to me and they've left their previous therapist and I ask them why, and they might say, well, she would give me this like homework, like we would have ideas of homework, but then like she would just never bring it up again and I would forget about it. And then like a month or two later, she'd be like, oh yeah, did you ever do that thing or whatever? Um, for the sake of using that client's time efficiently, and for the sake of, by definition, they're struggling with this stuff. They might be in denial. They might forget their homework as like what we call motivated forgetting, right? Because it was going to be challenging or it was going to be hard, and they had it as a defense, they quote forgot, they didn't want to do it. It's your job. That's just my view. I know some therapists have this thing where they say if the client doesn't bring it up, then it must not be important or whatever, or it's the client's job to bring it up. It's part of the effort that they have to make. To be honest, I really disagree. I think it's the therapist's job to know what it is, and in a gentle way. I always tell the client, the homework is optional, but if you didn't do it, I want to understand why. It doesn't mean you're wrong. It might mean I need to refine the homework if the homework was not helpful or it was off base or it was too complicated. But it might also be that you need a little accountability, a little encouragement. And so I feel it's the therapist's job. And I think of it like this, like if you were seeing a personal trainer and you showed up and they were just like, I don't know, what did we do last week, right? Like it doesn't feel as motivating as when that trainer has a list of exactly what he told you to do. He told you to try eating hard-boiled eggs for your snack, and he's like, how are those hard-boiled eggs? Did you eat them? You know what I mean? It's just like it makes you feel, to me at least, like you've got somebody in your corner. And again, with high functioning people, they want somebody as smart and as sharp and as organized and as driven as they are, that can actually run alongside them and be helpful. The last thing you ever want, in my opinion, is for the client to be organizing the therapist to in any way have a better sense of where we were or what was going on in our last session. I believe the therapist should lead that charge. And then I put stars basically by key points or themes that I'm seeing, where I'm like, oh wow, that's so interesting. She was afraid to speak up at work, and she was afraid to speak up with her boyfriend, or she's afraid to speak up with her boyfriend, but she can't stop talking at work. I put stars by things that I really want to hit or that I'm noticing as thematic. So Andrea, we can go on to slide 30, basically just for a second, because we kind of already talked about that. And I know we're coming towards the end of our time, so I'm going to skip ahead. In fact, let me just see here. I think we're going to skip all the way ahead, Andrea, to slide 41.
Okay.
Because I want to give you a few minutes to talk about therapy sites, and I want to give myself a few minutes to talk about, how people can go deeper on this. And of course, we want to have time for Q&A. So all the techniques I'm sharing with you, you can get more of them, through my book, which is available everywhere books are sold. I also have continuing education credits that you can do. I have a 3-hour video course where I unpack these techniques, and you can see it's at drchloe.com. And then there's for clinicians, therapy sites, and we'll be sending out some mailings as well. In addition to that, if you can keep scrolling ahead, please, Andrea, we'll
Sure.
be giving 5% of all of our revenue for the next 24 hours to Kiva, which is a charity that helps female entrepreneurs in developing economies. And just skipping ahead, Andrea, to 43, please.
Sure.
On the business side, in case somebody's like, yeah, I I like working with high functioning clients, and I want to know how to attract more of them, just, from the business side. I have a video course for that too. If you can scroll to slide 44, please, Andrea. And then just continuing to slide number 45, I also have some documents and templates. I know there's a lot of questions and whatnot that people have. And then Andrea, if you can go on then to your slides, which are, let's see here.
Let me just
slide 53 is therapy sites, and I'll turn it over to you there.
Awesome. Well, let me stop sharing and let me close everything out for us. So, Dr. Chloe, thank you so much. Again, thank you for sharing your time and your energy and your all of the great ideas that you always bring to the table. It was a really great presentation. I like so many of your ideas about building a successful practice. And here at Therapy Sites, we work with mental health professionals to help them create a professional looking website and ensure they can be found online where and when their clients are searching in order to help increase their new client acquisition. We encourage the practices we work with to build a website that's a reflection of themselves, but also to help them create a marketing strategy that allows them to achieve their goals. Our solutions make it easy to schedule appointments online, create a network of referrals via social media, and even the ability to interact with clients from virtually anywhere through our telehealth platform. As a special thank you for being here today, we are extending a special webinar offer for new websites and search engine optimization bundles, free for 2 months, plus a $50 gift card. So if you'd like to learn more about Therapy Sites and see how we can help attract more new clients to your practice, send us a quick email at webinar@therapysites.com. Again, webinar@therapysites.com, or feel free to call us at 866-255-8745. So let me just pop back into the slides and we can pop those up as well. Let me get to those. So let me screen share one more time and view. So again, as I mentioned earlier, just the introduction of Therapy Sites. So I'll just let you guys read through that. And let me get to the next slide. Exit. And then our offer. And there is a QR code here. Here's our website, and then the special offer, and then our contact information as well. Okay. And questions. So let me exit out of our presentation and let me pop up the questions tab and see what kind of questions we've gotten. All right. Let's see. So just as an FYI to everybody that's participated, and even those folks that registered but were unable to attend, there will be a recording of this session. So all the slides that Dr. Chloe had run through, you'll be able to see all of the slides, and there'll be a recording of the entire session. So that will be available to everybody. Let's see. A couple people asking about contact information for you, Dr. Chloe. So drchloe.com.
Also, there's a QR code. Thanks, Andrea. On slide 52.
Okay. Let me just pop that back up for us.
Yes, thanks so much. So yes, if you go to drchloe.com, drchloe.com, and you can just navigate to there's 4 clinicians, a little button there, or you can see there in the URL, it's drchloe.com/4-clinicians-therapy sites, or you can just do this QR code here that's on the screen. And there's promo codes for 20% off of all of my products there today, as well as a special offer for Therapy Sites if you want to. And you can get the 3-hour training with continuing education credit or without it. And then the business building videos and things like that are on sale as well.
Awesome. All right, so let me exit out of here, and then I will go back to the questions. Let me get back to those. All right, what other? Let's or the
Sorry, I'm
section where you, yeah.
no, no, I'm so sorry. I just didn't hear anything. I was afraid I dropped
Oh,
out by accident.
oh, no, no. One of the questions, or I think just maybe a general comment, was that there was some kind of a high fives and some exclamation points in regards to your feedback in regards to self-care. It was earlier in the session where you were talking about, having clients prepare 5 things, alternative topics, if you would. And so there was a lot of kudos in regards to those topics. But one of the questions was, do you help those clients build that list? Or is
Yes.
that more of like a homework session?
Yeah. I actually think it's really helpful to help the clients build a list because, you as the therapist probably I think you should, know their life pretty well. So what I might do is I might introduce the topic, the mental shortlist as a way to deal with, ruminative thoughts and to redirect yourself onto a new topic. And then I say, look, we want to come up with 5 topics that are going to feel juicy and interesting and appealing. And I explain we want to have them be from a variety of different domains so that whatever type of mood you're in at the moment, you're going to have something that's going to feel, interesting or productive or, just that will in some way appeal to you. And so I say, let's come up with 5 topics, and I often will say, maybe we could start building the list together. And then I'll ask the client, is there anything that comes to mind for you that you think would be good to have on the list? And, sometimes the client will just, spit out a whole bunch of good topics right away. And I say, great. Okay. I say, now I want you to write them down. And I tell them, I want you to be able to, ideally memorize them. I tell them, and, next session, I'm going to ask you if you can tell me your 5 topics without checking your phone, because the idea is that we want you to really have these ingrained in your mind so that, if you're in line at the grocery store, you're in a meeting, or just wherever you are, if your mind gets pulled into a dead end topic, that 5 good topics off the top of your head that you can tantalize yourself with instead.
Mm-hmm.
But if the client is like, gee, I don't know, well, there's, what, then I'll say, okay, well, would you like my help? I can offer a few ideas. And, usually they say yes. And again, then if as their therapist, hopefully, you have a few ideas of, projects or, again, whether it be breathing exercises or upcoming plans or whatever that they keep meaning to do or meaning to think about, you can help them to build that list.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Chloe. I might have lost you, but I did share in the chat for everybody the information for therapy sites, as well as the information for Dr. Chloe. So
Great.
thank you, guys. Let me see if there's any other questions. Let's see. A lot of feedback in regards to taking notes. I'm a note taker as well. I feel like I've got to jot everything down. It's part of like just the way my brain works. So there was a lot of great feedback about that.
I'm glad to
Um,
hear that
yeah.
because I just want to say it's funny. Like when I was in graduate school, I was actually discouraged from taking notes during sessions. And I don't know, people come from different programs, but I had my supervisor was very psychoanalytic. And he told me that he felt like it was like me putting something between the client and myself, and that I was being, too intellectual or whatever, and I just kept right on doing it,
Yeah.
and I've had clients tell me that it makes them feel cared for. It makes them feel like I'm really paying attention. And again, when they come in and I'm able to just easily flip back a couple sessions here and there and say, oh, well, gee, it's interesting that, you're saying that you feel like this could really be the guy for you, because we have to remember it was just 2 weeks ago that he told you that he wasn't really into commitments and you were nervous about that. So how is that all fitting together? Just and the fact that you literally have that at your fingertips. When
Right.
I'm seeing a client regularly, I'll usually have a dedicated notebook for each client, so it's really easy for me to just see what's going on from week
Right.
to week with them.
No, that's wonderful, and that's kind of the way my brain works too. I have to, like, it makes me feel like I've got to write something down in order to, get it in there.
Mhm.
Um, one of the other comments was in regards to, some of the topics that you talked about, high functioning, clients, right? But reminding yourself to be just as organized and just as prepared as we're expecting those folks to be. And I thought that really rang a bell with a number of the attendees here today as well. So kudos to that comment too. And then the homework, that was the last question I wanted to bring up. So the homework, is that something that you have kind of in your mindset where you've got a list of things that you have prepared in advance? Is that something just based on the client themselves, or maybe there's some overlap?
Yeah, so it's going to depend on the client themselves, but if we have a moment, Andrea, if you can go back to the slides and go to slide number 31,
Okay.
I have about 3 slides on homework. Okay, so
Mhm.
yes, the homework is going to be tailored for each client, but like remember, say the zone of control exercise, where we came up with action items that you can do when you're feeling anxious, right? And so that becomes the homework, right?
Okay.
So if you have a client, say for example, that's nervous about they're unhappy with their job and they're trying to understand, well, hey, is it that this job is really truly like not paying me enough? Or do I just need to understand what the actual job market is today? While you might give that client homework to spend 15 minutes a day looking at LinkedIn, or a
Hmm.
client who says like, well, gee, I just don't feel like I have a network. I might say, well, you know what, maybe some good homework for you would be to create a LinkedIn account and start building one, right? Or maybe
Sure.
you have a client that, part of the work has been that they're afraid to tell, their dating partner that they're looking for a commitment. So you role play a conversation and you help them prepare for it. And then their homework is to have the conversation, right? Or if you go to slide 32, maybe you've done that 3-part breath with a client and worked with them about mindfulness. Their homework might be to, practice doing that for 5 minutes a day. Or you have a client that's nervous about dating. You might say, well, maybe your homework is to set up 3 dating profiles, even if you don't activate them yet.
Hmm.
Just the act of creating them and of having a friend do that maybe for you or whatever. So again, each client's homework will definitely be different. And there's one more example on slide 33. So if you have a client, say, that has trouble sleeping and relaxing and giving themselves permission to relax, you can have them set up their smart home device that, at 9 o'clock every night, mine will say, Chloe, it's time to get ready for bed. Your sleep is important. And then it will play, nature sounds. So again, you wouldn't give this to a client that sleeps too
Hmm.
much, right? But yeah, like every client's homework is going to be different. But you as the therapist, I hope would have some idea of, what would be a healthy next step. How could this client convert the insight that we're having in therapy into some
Hmm.
kind of action outside of the therapy room? That is, in my experience, what high functioning clients are craving. And it's such a healthy thing. I've had so many of them tell me again that they've been basically shamed by therapists in the past for wanting to quote fix they're like, oh well, I love to fix my problems and my therapist told me I just need to learn how to sit with my problems. And they're so relieved that there's a therapist that wants to certainly examine and reflect, but then also say like, okay, well, what could you do outside of the therapy room that would take this insight and bring it to life and change and positive movement within your life? And
Right.
that, my friends, is the homework.
Right. 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 Exactly. Dr. Chloe, honestly, thank you so much for giving us a few extra minutes. I know we're a couple minutes over. Like I mentioned, um, the session will be recorded, so everybody will have availability to that, which you'll be able to see the slides and obviously hear our conversation from today. But again, Dr. Chloe, thank you so much. I appreciate
Thank
it
you.
more than you can ever imagine. And I want to thank all of our attendees one more time. Thanks for being patient with us with our technical stuff today. But again, thank you. Have a great rest of the afternoon, and I appreciate everybody attending today. Thank you so much.
Thanks.